GM, GA, GE, wherever you may be. Today it's Thursday, May 19th, and we have some NFTs to talk about. Otherdeeds, Moonbirds have some storylines coming up this weekend. Talk about that with Tyler today. Welcome, Tyler. So today we basically left Monday's show uncertain of what some of these mints were going to do this week. We had the Karafuru 3D, the Lazy Lions. They had their Cubs that came out, and those two. I don't know. I guess we can get to talking about those here a bit. But what was sort of your so far this week? Have you seen things?
Yeah, it's been an up and down week for sure, but I'm feeling cautiously bullish right now. There's a lot of red on the board. We're not minting out new projects. There's been a lot of, crypto's dead, NFTs are dead sentiment on Twitter, but that's not really what the data is showing us. Overall liquidity is abysmal right now, so like that can't be that's a problem for us, certainly. But the way some of the top tier floors have held up this week and actually moved up has been a very positive sign. So I'm feeling okay.
Yeah, as I mentioned in the beginning there, Otherdeeds and Moonbirds have been somewhat of highlights on the week as far as floor prices go. As mentioned, like volume is way down across the board, but I think the floor is holding up means that people aren't really rushing to dump out of these projects either. My sort of macro take on that is people right now still feel more comfortable in what their holdings are versus moving it into something else. Like there's not great new mints coming out. There's not other tokens or coins on other, say like Avalanche, Solana, or these other chains that people are dying to move over to, or just switching everything out for cash. It seems like the way people are sitting right now, they are just somewhat comfortable in waiting to see what goes on and if there's any sort of plans of action. But as of now, it doesn't seem like they're rushing to sell off all of their assets or anything.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely the case here. So that's been definitely good to see. I think another part of it is that maybe we fell too far. When crypto, I'm not going to say bottoms, but when it had a really big dip last week, the NFT markets fell in line, and now this is either just kind of a bounce up recovery, or maybe a sign of something greater, and that maybe we are ready to move forward from this rebaselining and start to move back up. And another piece we were chatting about this earlier is they're still down in US dollar terms quite a bit.
Yeah.
Right. Like the ETH terms are one thing, and a lot of these are still down, 30 to 50% in ETH terms, but it's actually worse in US dollar terms. So for those who do have the funds kind of on the sidelines in USDC or just totally, out of the ecosystem, it's presented a fairly attractive entry price. So that could be a part of it too.
Yeah, and we've seen some of the projects like Mutant Apes are back down under 20, but the quotas are above 20. So you wonder if people are now sort of choosing quotas in that sense. Azuki, after how wild of a week they had last week, they didn't just fizzle away. They're still sitting in that 13, 14 range, which I think shows that people seem back to comfortable at it there. And then Clonex saw a little boost last few days. They've been settling around 14 here. But I mean, the big story of the week has sort of been this okay bears, not okay bears dilemma. Do you have any takes on that? Because not okay bears seem to be back after potentially being bought out by 0x Hustler. So what's your thoughts on this okay bears, not okay bears situation?
Yeah, so for our listeners, viewers who may not be aware of the whole situation. So OK Bears was kind of it's a soul based NFT project that caught mega storm. It became the phenom. I think it went all the way up to what, like 250 soul or something.
Yeah.
It went crazy high. The OK Bears did. And it kind of led this resurgence in Solana NFTs. We've seen a lot of traditional ETH based NFT traders kind of moving over to Solana based on the OK Bears kind of aftermath there. And then we got essentially a derivative project launched on ETH called the Not OK Bears, and it's essentially just a flipped version of the OK Bears. Now they're facing left instead of right. I want to say they were a free mint, either free or just bare like 0.01 price, and they ran on Monday from 0 all the way to like 0.4 ETH at peak. They came back down to about 0.2, 0.25. They were the talk of the town. They were the leading volume.
Yeah.
Across the entire NFT space on ETH or Solana. I think they out traded the OK Bears on Solana as well. Then the next morning, OpenSea hit them with the DMCA. They're off OpenSea. The floor kind of fell out to like 0.07. At least I saw it there. I don't know if it got much lower. Now they're back to 0.14 on this acquisition news, and we're seeing 600 ETH traded on Looks Rare. I think some people, they may think they're fun. I like the OK Bears art, but I mean, it's a derivative project, right? It's going to go to 0 at some point. So it's legitimately just hot potato, chasing steam and hype. And you don't want to be the last one to hold it. We've seen this game play out before with the funks, with the fakes. We know how this story ends.
Yeah, and I think some of it as well is don't get caught up in what people are saying, because some of them are probably bag holders. One thing that is getting somewhat talked about, which I think created a little of that pump last night, was they were talking about reworking the art to be able to get it back on OpenSea and not look too much like the Not OK Bears art. But like, you're still taking the name from it, and it's just a little weird to me. Like, I'm not a buyer. I didn't get into either of them. But yeah, it's just still weird to me. Like, there's so many other legit projects that are trying to actually do stuff versus just copying and riding off of the hype of someone else. So that's sort of my concern with those. Like, there's even projects right there, like Ivy Boys, we saw have a little boost recently. Like, it's basically the same price as to get in on these others, and like, why not go on that one, which is just blatantly copying someone else?
Yeah, no, and maybe that is what happened. I'm still a little unclear on what sparked this Ivy Boys run. So I've been following this closely. We talked about in the weekly preview a few weeks back ahead of its mint. I ended up buying 7 or 8 of these, and then ultimately selling. There wasn't a ton of demand pre-reveal. They're kind of just chopping. Then post-reveal, they fell from like 0.18, 0.15 to like 0.1.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like it was just going to follow the same arc that we've seen play out on some of the more expensive sets like Ragnarok and PXN. We can talk about those where it steams up pre-reveal and then falls 40 to 60% afterwards. So I thought that's what was going to be the case. I was wrong. And now the Ivy Boys are mega green. They're up 200%. They're over 0.4 ETH. One of in ROI terms, I think the biggest winner of the week. I guess pending. Let's put Not OK Bears aside, but for actual projects, they're the big winner. So I think owners are happy. I think it's probably tied to they've got their first airdrop already lined up. The trunks are coming for the Ivy Boys on the 23rd. I want to say either the snapshot or the actual airdrop is the 23rd. So that's soon. And they tweeted out that there's going to be 3 NFTs as a part of that. So good for them. I'm happy for the project.
Yeah, I think that's going to bring us into our next topic there. But just this idea of new projects that are currently minting, and they have these sort of run-ups beforehand. So NFT statistics.eth had this thread, a punk holder that is basically talking about something, a concept that isn't that new, and I think isn't too surprising to hear, but basically using the PXN Ghost and Ragnarok as examples. But the whole idea of buy the rumor, sell the news, buying pre-reveal, and then selling it pre-reveal once it rides up has generally been more profitable for people. Of course, if they hit the high end stuff, you still have that rare lotto. But what's sort of your thoughts here, where there's these high volume pre-reveal pumps that then just once they reveal dip, and some of them slower than others, but they basically just dip, and then people, as we've mentioned before, just go to the next thing.
Yeah, so I'm not. We've seen similar price action before, but to me they're a little bit different. So we saw this, with Mechaverse and with Hape, but when those fours dropped, in a lot of ways it was just reaction to like the art,
Not
and
right,
like
yeah.
like this was a big letdown. I don't really feel like that was the case for Ragnarok and PXN. Like the PXN artwork is exactly what we thought it was, for at least from what I've seen on Twitter and whatnot. People were generally happy with it. There's been this community poll to change to make them more light, because they come off a little dark. But that's been really the only negative feedback that I've seen. So it feels like something else, and I feel, to me, like everyone is just really getting into these pre-reveal, trying to get the rare lotto, and with this price action and fallout afterwards, it's the math doesn't make sense anymore. Like I can tell you for sure, like the PXN rare lotto wasn't big enough to warrant paying 4.5 and then trying to exit at 2.5 the next day. And in fact, I mean, it's sitting, we can show it real quick. I think I've got it up. It's sitting at 1.65 right now. So I think we need to be aware of this trend. And I think the way to play this now is you got to wait post reveal. And I mean, if this is a product that you want to buy into and take part in and ride out for at least a little while, you just got to wait. Wait for
Almost
that dip.
accept that you can't hit a rare lotto.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess the caveat to that, it's still been profitable for those who are able to mint, right, at the
Right.
lower prices. So grinding the whitelists, grinding in the Discord, that method still works. But for those who are buying secondary, it just doesn't quite make as much sense to me.
Yeah.
And then I thought the second tweet in the thread was really eye-opening and kind of tough to swallow, but again, something we all have to be aware of. And the general theme is just all the new products that have come out in the past 2 months that have done decent volume, at least 450 ETH, and got a floor above 0.5. So fairly meaningful, enough that would be tracking them. I'd say, like, kind of skimming through this list.
Can you click into the picture?
Yeah.
Make it bigger? Yeah.
So here's a list. It's about 15 to 20 or so projects that have met those criteria of pumping, so like 500 ETH volume at least, and they got to a 0.5 floor. For those who can't see the screenshot, several, like 6 are down 80% or more. A dozen are down 70% or more. They're all down at least 50%. So it's just kind of showing that, we talked about the rotation to the top tier and to the blue chips, but man, it's tough to see. Like, this is the result of that. So there is a limited time window when people are paying attention to these lower end, newer projects, and then people are just quietly exiting them. And this is kind of the aftermath. And not only is the floor down, liquidity is terrible. So he's got a volume chart in here. Most of these, the highest daily liquidity is 15 ETH. So not only is the floor down, but like it's not even liquid. So it's a rough spot.
I think that's off of Kiwami, which I think had like a random pump day in there. That probably is around why that had the 15 ETH volume. One thing that this table specifically is showing me, a lot of those are those anime projects. And I think people are just rode that hype off of Azuki, and it was almost for like no reason in a way, but Shin Sakai, Akuma is on this list, Kawami is on this list. The Zombie Club token, I think, had somewhat of that argument to it. Everai and Anada, like Galverse might have been anime too. Um, but a lot of these that rode the, whether it was anime or in the case of the Zero X OG pass as well, they're riding this like Eastern culture um, sort of narrative that I think has gotten some people into trouble. Frank is on this list, which I think basically anyone that's watched NFTs for a while, I think understands why that one pumped and dumped. But yeah, it's interesting to see this. Like the fuck Avatar one is, I think, interesting to have on this list. That might be the most surprising one on here. Arcade Land, I think, is somewhat surprising because it seemed like they were having a lot of partnerships. So I don't know. It's hard to say because on the other side, this didn't affect Moonbirds, and we'll come to this in a second, but hasn't really affected Karafuru in the same way either. So maybe it's still like a flight towards the good stuff, and these are just clearly not good stuff and just short term stuff.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because like right out of the gate, some of these seemed fine, and they seemed to even have like communities rallying around them. Like Everai, like the Azuki
Yeah,
community was kind of rallying around Everai and Kiwami or Akuma. I think it was Kiwami. But there was some. We were actually seeing these as PFPs on Twitter. Generally positive sentiment. I didn't really dive into the founding teams on all of these, but they didn't seem like some of the pure junk that we saw like in 2021, right, where
right.
everyone was just picking a cartoon animal and making a 10K set and launching it. But I mean, the impact and how to trade this is either you got to get in early and have a fast, sell button activated, or just kind of skip all of these. And if you
Yeah,
don't think it's going to make it to the top tier product, if you don't think it has legitimate chance to get to a 10 ETH floor and kind of get into our blue chip status, the safest move is just to kind of sit it out. And it's a little painful in some of those peak FOMO days. Those days are fun, right, when the floor is pumping and everyone's happy. But we see the aftermath, and this part is not fun.
yeah, and I think some of that just has to do with the general market conditions. Some of these they had, I want to say, like the right story. Like the Ghostly Ghosts had the Omni-Chain story attached to them. But yeah, it's kind of sad to see, but I think at the same time, it just goes back to what we always say, where 99% of these projects are not going to hold up long term. And even if long term means 6 months, a lot of them that don't really have too much building going on and don't have enough of a good story. So be cautious out there when something pumps up and you see it at half an ETH. Like look into why it's that. We've seen. I don't know if you saw. Miladies have been going up a little recently, but they have
Mm-hmm.
some sort of like a cult following to them, so it kind of makes sense with that. But yeah, the other one that was new was the Karafuru, their 3D. So their main collection is basically held up since it's just been pretty much a stable coin at 2 ETH for a while, and now it's getting you one of these Carrefour, uh, the 3D versions that they minted out 0.475 in the Dutch auction, and then the allow list got that at 70%. It was like 0.33. And then they ran a public sale yesterday that got to about 8,200 sales total. And then they minted the rest of the 10K to their community wallet. And then the other OG holders are going to be able to mint one, so there'll be another 5,000 coming out. So, what was your sort of take on this Carrefour 3D uh, auction and just sale from this week? Because they're currently above what they sold at. They're around this 0.5. They've been pretty much sitting at 0.5. So nothing crazy as far as ROI goes, but it's also not crashing like we see a lot of these other projects.
Yeah, it's a bit more normal, but we were talking about this being a leading indicator of the week as one of the first bigger name projects to do their companion drop or a new drop here this week, and there was going to be a lot of eyes on it. And it was a great start when their private sale or the Dutch auction rather was a great start. It sold out at the second price, 0.475, almost immediately, and then started catching traction on secondary. And then secondary started to fall a bit. It was around like 0.4, 0.41, still above that mint, but not enough to entice that whitelist sale. So that was a bit surprising to me. Generally in the past, really all it took was a secondary price above mint price, and that was going to be enough for people to come in. And we didn't have that. So I think that also points to just the market kind of smarting up, people being tighter right now on what they're trying to enter into, and just kind of realizing, at least for this one as a companion, what is my upside? The upside feels relatively capped, right? With Carrefour Genesis holding a 1.8 to 2 ETH floor, these aren't going to flip that. We've never seen that before, right? And with 3x the supply at 15,555, it feels like it's in, a decent spot. I'd say this is kind of a positive outcome for anyone who minted. I think, and we chatted about this week, is if you do the math and kind of look at the ratios that other products hold between their Genesis and their companions, is Carrefour too cheap now at 3.5x their companion? Typically we see anywhere from 6-1 to 10-1 to 12-1, right?
Yeah.
And maybe there's some reasons for that. And Cam in the comments is talking about people like these more than the original art.
Yeah.
So that could be at play as well.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. And I do think there are people that probably wanted to get involved with Carrefour. They had their carnival that had 40,000 people there, and I mean it was out in Indonesia. $5,000 or however much the actual in USD for their main collection. Like $5,000 is a lot for people, especially in that part of the world. And this is more of a for $1,000, so it is a cheaper entry point to still be a part of it. The artwork, I do like this artwork better. I'm into my two, just sort of sitting on them and seeing like they haven't dipped, which to me seemed somewhat bullish. And there's only like 600 that were even listed for sale in the other collection, not the Genesis. But yeah, Genesis is still kind of around the two. I did think that they might go up after all this if this was holding at 0.5 as mentioned. I do think some people might not realize that there's 5,000 more of these that are going to come out. Maybe they do. I feel like this could be one of those sort of secret followings out there in the Twitter sphere that this is just a whole separate group of investors, and this is what NFTs are to them, is just like Carrefour, and they don't need as many people to keep it sort of like above water. So maybe this is just what the collections are, 0.5 for their secondary version and 2 for the main version. Maybe they just sit like that for a while, and that's just sort of what they are. But yeah, I'm not sure. I think this doesn't reveal until late next week. I think it was 10 days after that initial sale. So still some time to sort of watch and see what happens. But I don't know. Do
And
you
the
have anything
holders,
else in Carrefour?
no, just and the holders are still going to get theirs. They haven't gotten them yet,
Mhm.
right? So there's another 55 coming to the supply. Cam saying he likes that they did the holders last. Yeah, it's kind of a reverse order. Typically, the holders get the airdrop first,
Hmm.
and then they can also kind of set the price, right? As he mentions, and in this case, the price will be set for them. So it'll be interesting, if they look to kind of immediately undercut, which is typically what happens when we see additional supply come in, or if it'll maybe be a bullish event. But it's also kind of talking through that the floor is probably also capped until that additional supply comes in, just because no one's going to buy,
Yeah.
in too much bulk until those come through. But it
Yeah.
was an interesting indicator and one that kind of painted the or foretold some worse events that we saw later in the week. I don't know if you want
Yeah.
to transition to lazy Cubs.
Yeah. And just quickly before we hop off this, the point that Cam made as well is about the holder count. And so there's it's over 3,600 of the Karafuru holders out of 5555. So it's a pretty high percentage of people that just hold one. That's about 65% or so on the holder percentage. So
Mm-hmm.
strong in that sense. And then this so far, it's about 56% for their secondary collection. So decent number of holders as far as like percentage wise goes. But also, I think what helps them is the smaller collection. So we'll see. One that we are going to continue to follow. And then Lazy Cubs, one that since we got off air on Monday have changed like everything. Originally, they were going to have this 10,000 that we're going to mint in a Dutch auction that ended at 0.25. Then after we got off air, they switched that to 0.1. Then they made it a flat rate of 0.1, and people just weren't minting these. So now they've changed the total down to 4,444. And it almost confirms to me some things. But what's your take on this? Because we don't usually see the secondary collections be this much smaller than the primary collections.
Yeah, and this was a rough outcome
Yeah.
for the Lazy Lions. There's no way to sugarcoat it. We were speculating on Monday. It didn't look great for them to be able to mint this out with the Genesis set holding like 0.88, 0.89, whatever that floor was ahead of this, especially with that bottom capped at 0.25. And for the full picture, this is a 22,000 NFT
Well,
secondary set coming in, right?
was
Well,
supposed to be.
originally it was going to be. So 10,000 are still going to the Lions. Then they had the public sale of 10,000, which has now been trimmed to 4444, of which about 50% have minted out here at 0.1. It's been moving. I think when I checked yesterday, it was only at like 1,400. So they've been getting some movement. I'll have to pull up the floor here. I don't know if anyone has the Lazy Cubs link handy.
Yeah,
Here it is.
it's kind of weird. Like if you've been following it, like
It's right in
something
front
I
of me.
mentioned on Monday's show was it just this one, even though it's a cheap entry point, just feels like it's so obviously just a way to try to extract more money out before you just completely dust. Just the fact that let's lower the price and people still didn't buy. Oh, let's lower the supply. Anything to just get more buyers, and they're still only at half. Like only 1,000 people are even considering buying these at 0.1. They were on pre-mint. People that got the pre-mint raffle winnings have been asking because they were supposed to get it at 80% of the cost. And now those people are like, well, if no one's minting these in the public, like, why do we even want to mint them? So it's kind of weird. Also, there's 3 ETH worth of volume traded. Like, can't you just go back in and mint more? So I don't know. Everything to do with this has just looks bad, I think, in my opinion, for the Lazy Lions community as well. But what do you think? Like, do you think that Lazy Lions are just going to crash after this because people see this as holders as well and probably aren't too happy?
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard to rebound from this. I mean, the tactics they used are kind of the ones that we see from the anonymous product teams who are just kind of looking to sell out their mints, right? It kind of reeks of desperation. It reeks of not not properly planning this mint, right? It was obvious to us when we were looking at the numbers, like this is not going to mint out. And Cam saying it in the comments, if they had done a 0.05 open mint, it probably does sell out, and it probably becomes a gas war at that number.
Do you think like is 0.05 with the gas war that much different than zero point 0.1 essentially free?
I think it is because not only is it zero point 0.1 now, but they changed it. The Dutch auction was egregiously slow from 0.5 to 0.1, and there was just no demand for it, right? Like, this is still such a FOMO driven market that if it's at 0.05 and you get 1,000 mints on the gun, then I think it likely catches some momentum there, and would also show that
Mhm.
hey, we're doing a raise, but we're a little bit more conscious of the market right now, and the way they structured it just didn't share that at all. So I think we're going to see an exodus from the holders, except for maybe the strongest ones. And now it's like, what do you do from here?
Yeah. And I think it also goes to show that like gutter cats, when they got to point one, people went for it. People were excited to get in at point one. This one, it's point one basically from the start, and no one was excited to. So I think it shows a little differences in their community. And one thing people have questioned about the Lazy Lions community is if it was like fake. And they're going on Twitter, they're like rating comments and posting on Twitter that way, and it seems like a lot of that has, as mentioned in the comments here, fizzled out. And uh, unfortunate to say it that way, but yeah, I think this one is one of the more notable that I think
Mm-hmm.
people remember Lazy Lions. And we've seen a few different projects do these expansions recently. And I don't know, I think this is probably the biggest failure of them. Uh, the Forgotten Runes people, they had more mint out at point 0.6 than this. So that one's a little different. But yeah,
Definitely
I'd
different.
say this is probably the biggest failure of those secondary collections that I've seen.
Yeah, and it's going to impact the future mints and like the whole NFT market, right? We've got chain runners doing a
Yeah.
secondary drop on Saturday. Their floor is only zero point 0.4 for the Genesis set, and I think they're trying to run a mint at 0.1. There's just not going to be demand, and so like if they don't adjust that price down, like they're not going to sell out. And I think any team looking to launch into this environment just really needs to reevaluate their plans and make sure that they feel like they've got demand at the price point that they're looking to come out at. And the market's giving us some obvious signs right
Yeah.
now. And like you don't want to make this mistake. These mistakes are bad. And I think it's going to be very difficult for the Lazy Lions to come back from this. And probably and Chain Runner's team is likely facing a similar situation.
Yeah. All right, let's switch pivot a little into a little more happy thoughts and where people are moving their money and the projects that are currently being a little more successful. So let's start with Moonbirds here. Moonbirds have slowly been rising all week. Listings have been going down. There's over 95% of these currently nesting. There are nesting rewards and the new bronze level that will be starting Sunday, I believe, around 5 p.m. Eastern time. So, Moonbirds, what's your thoughts here? I think we could get into a little of what you think is going to happen after that Sunday nesting level up. But what's your thoughts on how they've gone up a little this week? They were around 22, I want to say, on Monday when we were looking. So they've been casually just rising here
Yeah.
while everyone else is just talking about volume down, this, that. But people seem pretty comfy in their nests right now.
Yeah, it's just been a slow march up on low volume, which I think is it's a great indicator of the holder base not capitulating right now. and like no one's really listing much into this buy action. On the flip side, the buy action is not that strong, right? I think there was like 20, 24 sales yesterday, um, which when we used to see those 20 sales per minute in peak Moonbird mania. But it's still definitely a positive indicator. Let's talk about the oddity. So we've started to get some hints about what this could actually be. So there's another Twitter handle. It goes by Moonbirds Oddities. And on the 17th, we got our first hint: 10,000 fanciful treats make for unsavory pellet pals. And then just 2 hours ago, in the nest, the oddities will appear. And I don't know when they changed their PFP.
I think earlier today. They keep changing it, though. They do keep changing it.
Right, so I'm not putting much stock in this, but previously we got the picture of what looked like a nest of some kind.
Yeah.
Or maybe people thought it was an
like a bee's nest, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like a hive. Yes.
It's definitely connected to the Moonbirds nesting. I think they're making that pretty clear. Can you click on the 6 following? Because this is the fun rumor that I've been seeing. So look at who they follow right now. Some of them obvious. Proof, Kevin Rose, and the artist of Moonbirds. Then we got a couple others here. We got Tableland, which not sure if that one's too big of a piece of information, but the other one is Super Gremplin. So what's your take on that? Do we think there's a crossover with Toads here?
Wow, that's interesting. So I didn't realize, I didn't click into this before.
Yeah, I'm in a chat where people are all about, they clicked in and they're all about this right now.
Well, it's interesting because my initial reaction was, well, Grimplin's obviously tied to the project because of there's a Grimplin trait.
Yeah.
With
previously,
the toad head, but they're not following art blocks. And there's also an art blocks squiggle trait. So if they're following art blocks, I would say, this is a non-story, but they're not following art blocks. And it's really just the team.
Or any other artist.
Yeah, it's just Grimplin, and then whatever Tableland is, who
probably the technology behind it seems.
Right. So wow. So now I'm the wheels are spinning in my head. If this is some kind of a Grimplin based airdrop for the first nest just 1 month in, that is going to go over very well in the market. So
this is one that I've been like, I've been looking at Moonbirds. I hate that the price just keeps going up every time I look, and I'm like, it's just more and more like it's harder to get in, and there's less listings every day, and this nesting is in there. Dark does kind of have some similarities with the Grim Syndicate guys. I'm not sure if Gremplin has posted anything recently. It doesn't look like it.
I'm curious, is this a new PFP for him, or has he had this for a while? I'm not familiar with
I don't know. I'm not sure what that image is even.
Okay. Yeah, similar. So I wonder if there's any hint there. But man, that's a good find.
Yeah.
For those who caught that. What's interesting is people were starting to think that, after the nest, the floor is going to go down, potentially tank, the listings are going to come in. I'm not so sure about that. Of course, like I guess if the airdrop is really good, maybe that value comes out of this. But the Moonbirds owners that I know and talked to didn't come into this with a 1 month time horizon. Like no one was like, man, we gotta get this bronze, we gotta get to the bronze nest, and then we're gonna dump this thing. Like this is, especially in this market crash, Moonbirds kind of coming up and cementing themselves as I'm comfortable calling them the number 2 PFP right now, even though they haven't proven much. With the Azuki fallout, to me, they're number 2. I don't think we're going to see a huge wave of capitulation after this airdrop. I'm sure there'll be some, right? There's still plenty of just day traders and swing traders in this market, but I think maybe 100 or 200, but not like 500 or 1,000.
Yeah, and I keep going back and forth on this. I think part of it has to do with there are people out there that I think are waiting for the bronze to list, but at the same time, I think you can assume that they're going to list above floor. So my thought on the floor dipping was going to be there's more competition with, if you don't have bronze, you're going to have to undercut if you go to list, which doesn't necessarily mean it's going to crash below 20 ETH or anything like that. But as we've seen with a lot of these collections, like there's only 150 of these that are listed, and all it takes is another 100 of them to be listed to drop the floor, and it was pretty thin to get from 22 to 26. Like there, you could do that in like 20 sales or whatever. So I think that's part of it and why people are thinking of it that way. I agree with you though. Like if you're nesting and looking at this long term, why are you ditching at likely the worst of the rewards? So I heard that the silver is going to be 2 months, 60
Mhm.
days or so. Is that right? So it's going to be a little while before that next one. So people, depending on just the macro and everything, I think once you have bronze, you're a lot more likely to list than before that. But yeah, I'm not really expecting these to drop to 15 by next week or anything like that. I just think it's going to be interesting to watch after, once they find out what happens on Sunday, if it's connected to the oddities, if oddities are months away, days away. I think there'll just be a few factors in there that, as looking from a buyer standpoint, I wanted to wait and see what happens there, because I think it's more likely that the floor drops after that than before it. So that was sort of my thinking in that sense.
That's interesting. I think my only counter to that is I feel like this is a higher upside, lower downside situation. And I think my logic is there aren't huge expectations for this airdrop. Like I don't think any of us are expecting like MAYC level airdrop 1 month in, right? But if this is really good, then I think people are like, man, I gotta get into Moonbirds, and it's gonna drive some FOMO, and then I could actually see the floor maybe running up to where it was near peak mania. And then on the flip side, if the airdrop kind of busts a little bit, but we get a nice spin from Kevin, hopefully he's recovered from COVID by the time we get this airdrop.
Yeah.
Then I don't think it, like to your point, I don't think it drops that much, right? I think it's probably capped at like 22 the
Hmm.
downside.
Yeah. So now the other one that I've been following this week, which is kind of doing the same path, and there could be something on Sunday, are the codas. So codas have reflipped mutants, and Otherdeed's floor overall has gone from about 2.8 to now 3.2. Uh, People are expecting something on Sunday, because Sunday is when the mutant and Bored Ape collections, that's their last day to be able to claim one of these other deeds. If you're listening, if you are living under a rock and haven't claimed yet, I don't understand why you wouldn't. It's 3 ETH. That's, I mean, $10,000. Well, depending, I guess. Could be. These days, it's only around 7,000 for the floor one, but I mean, there's probably a few codas left even, and now the coda floor is around 22 ETH. It was 18 earlier in the week, so similar 4 ETH rise as the Moonbirds had. What's your thoughts on this? Because the current rumor going around is Sunday is going to be a little more announcement on what the decoupling of codas is going to be, and people seem to think codas are going to become their own collection. I'm not sure my whole idea on that, but what's sort of your take here on this coda rise?
I think that's spot on in what's driving this. I don't necessarily believe it. Like I don't know that I'm falling for like this whole they couldn't say anything in the 21-day window because they explained mega codas like day one, which they didn't need to do. That could have easily just been a speculation driven thing. And then they updated the website 10 days into the window or 13 days or whatever it was. So I don't think their hands are totally tied when it comes to communication about this. So I won't be surprised if there's no announcement on Sunday, and this was all just like NFT, Twitter fake hype. But I think what's so shocking to me is that the hype, the narrative that's driving the Coda 4 increase right now is expectation that Codas will be their own unique NFT. That's the obvious outcome. They told us this. Like they updated the website and they said it's going to be decoupled. And
It's
yet I'm
like
hearing
beans again.
chatter.
This is the same
It's
thing that happened with beans. Like, but the name of the collection is beans, and you're surprised that the images are going to be beans.
it's shocking. So like I was a little disappointed when that news came out and the market didn't really move that much. Sometimes I get caught in my head. I'm like, oh, the market's getting smarter, it's getting more efficient. There just must not be that much demand for the codas on their own, and they're kind of sitting right around the mutants right in that 18 to 20 ETH range. But now, like I'm hearing word that there are these groups of people in like a coda DAO. There's 200 people who are in a group for codas, and they didn't know or don't still know that codas are going to be their own NFTs. It's just shocking to me. Um, so, yeah, I think if that gets announced, we're probably going to see a run up in the price. Because apparently it's not priced in. I thought it was, but what the heck do I know?
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's so tough because whenever people at current state of NFTs, when news gets rumored this heavily and the price also goes up like this, it almost like guarantees that something is coming. And it's sad to say, like the whole idea of like insider trading and that sort of thing aside, like it's almost as if someone does know and they eventually leaked it, and it just seems like similar to the idea we were just saying. Like if people are saying this is going to happen, something's probably going to happen. It might not be exactly what people are rumoring, but some sort of announcement might be happening, and we'll see. It could be something that people aren't happy about. I don't really know if like a 10,000 collection on its own is that bullish for me either. But then they had this that, as you just showed on the screen, this applied primate engineering. What's your thoughts on this? There's a missing character, basically, Dr. Abbott Gibbons, and went missing on what's that, May 6th.
May
So they're saying a
6th.
reward is offered. There's a little gamified version to this. So what's your thoughts on this applied primate engineering account?
Yeah, so when this first came out, my reaction to this was this was kind of the founders. It's either tied into future aspects of their roadmap, the non other side parts of their roadmap, um, or this was them kind of back in the lab, so to speak, and maybe throwing a curveball at the project and the community that no one really had on their radar, because we are now almost halfway through the year and everything is played out in line with that leaked pitch deck. And I think people know that. I think the founders obviously know that as well. So I'm not surprised that we're starting to see maybe a curveball come into the mix. I think what's interesting about this is I saw chatter that this applied primate engineering, I think, somehow has an OpenSea account, or
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Abbott Gibbons, someone tied to this account has an OpenSea account, and they're holding the an M3 serum,
Oh, I think I did see that. Yeah.
and there's not
That's
that
the name of the M3 account. Like the holder of one of the M3 serums. The
correct.
name of that OpenSea account is Applied Primate Engineering,
Yeah, I'm gonna pull it up
which
here.
there's what, three of those left?
Yeah,
Or is
so
it
there's
just
not
down
many
two?
left. So this is becoming a bigger deal. My internet's gonna be slow.
Because I'm it's crazy because there's Deepak has the other one, right?
Yeah, he still has his, and he hasn't used it yet, right?
Yeah. Because I wonder what this sort of storyline is, and it's tough because on one hand, like, would they ask Deepak to use his? Like he paid so much for it, and because they want this one to be like story wise, like the final one or something, um, or is this type of thing where you figure out the answer here, and then you get the serum,
There's,
which could be what it is.
there's only 2 owners. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's just these 2 left. I think it's the cheetah and the gold, right? Because the
Yeah,
trippy
that
went
sounds
last
right.
time.
Yep. Cheetah and the gold. So man, oh man. I mean, the last one of these sold for what, like 1,800? Oh wait, so Deepak transferred this to Applied Primate 2 months ago. I missed
Okay.
that.
So, well, 2 thoughts here. One is Deepak Applied Primate, potentially. But the other one is I feel like there's some sort of deal potentially in place to make this the last one. So we might see the other one get popped here before that. That's my other thought.
So I'm a little bearish on Deepak and his. So he bought the Alien Punk for 8,000 ETH on leverage, and then the market
Yeah.
crashed. So I wouldn't be surprised if Deepak needed to move his serum, and he wasn't going to get 1,500 ETH or his 1,500 ETH back, and so he kind of worked maybe a behind closed doors deals with
Yeah.
the Yuga team. So that's probably my leading theory right now. But man, this is interesting. Imagine if that's some kind of a prize for solving this mystery. I mean, we're talking about maybe it's not 1,500 ETH anymore, but it's probably has 600 ETH upside. What the rarest Kodas go for? I think we saw a Koda go for over 600. So even
I
in this
saw
market,
625 was one, yeah.
so man,
But the thing with this, though, to me, like we've talked about high-end Bored Ape sales in the past. Like this is a one-of-one Bored Ape, is why these have gone for so much. So I still think like people probably value this 1,000 plus. I would think,
yeah, no,
especially
I
since
tend to agree.
especially if it's the gold one, like the gold one-of-one Bored Ape. I wouldn't be surprised if people value that at like 2,500 or more. Like what is the highest end punks going for? Like if we see the apes on the punks, I forget the last alien sale. Last alien sale went for like $7 million US or something,
It
right?
was Deepak for 8,000 ETH.
Yeah. So like
So it was like 24 million.
okay, so I wouldn't be surprised if a one of one Bored Ape, the mutant gold ape, was valued somewhere in that range. Like I think that should be considered pretty similar to alien punk because of how rare they are. There's only 10 of these that are the M3 serums, and apes are clearly above punks at this point. So I wouldn't be surprised if that valuation is even higher
I would be surprised, but I agree with your
on the
logic.
gold
I think
one. But
I think it'll
yeah, I'm
be.
not sure
I
if
mean, I'd be
the
shocked
cheetah.
if the M3 gold breaks the Punk's alien record. But for sure, I think it could command 2,000, 2,500 ETH. And man, back to whatever they're doing here is going to drum up some real excitement. Kind of pending what's going to happen. And your thought when we were chatting earlier is it maybe tied to NFT NYC in some
Yeah.
capacity because this whole like where's Doc, and maybe there's clues to some kind of a scavenger hunt to find him in New York City. And I can tell you what kind of scavenger hunt interests me at 37 years old. It's one where I can find 2,000 ETH at the end of the hunt. So
And I mean, they
I'd be
announced 4 days of Ape Fest, right? So, I mean, to me, like they got to be doing some stuff during that, like to spread it out 4 days. Like this seems like something they would have at NFT NYC. So
yeah, I'm with you. So
we'll
I'm
see.
sure we'll hear more ahead of this, but a fun little twist, and I'm definitely excited about it.
Yeah, I do want to mention. I know Cam was mentioning in the comments, but I do have a step in article that's coming out today. That'll have a breakdown. I'm not sure if we're gonna really talk about much on this show. We're coming up around an hour here, but we're going to talk a little about this TBAC drop that's going to be happening this weekend. So since we talked on Monday, the floor has gone up a little bit. It was at like 3.2, wasn't it, on Monday?
Yeah, it was definitely lower, and the episode's floor is definitely higher. So the TBAC episodes, the cheapest one is now 5, and episode 1 is sitting at 25.
Yeah.
There was a whale sweep yesterday. Someone bought the full set of 8, and I think
there
it was
have been some
Mooncat.
Genesis sales I saw as well.
Oh
Since
wow!
Monday.
So the Genesis are moving too. Let me see if I can pull up the chimpers.
So are you? I guess my main question here is: are you still as bullish on this drop coming this weekend with everything that we've seen already through the week already?
Yeah. So I think the twist for the chimpers drop is that I think the best comparison is Invisible Friends, because 99% of the minters will have had to pay, or at least maybe not 99%, but anyone who's bought in recently is getting their allow list from the TBAC buys, which now have a floor 3.7, like we just showed.
Yeah, and they're not selling it at that price.
Right. So the chimpers are absolutely going to come out above a 3-4, in my opinion. But from a secondary perspective, I don't know if I love the ROI or the upside, coming in to buy at 3 ETH right off the gun. And essentially buying, someone's flip or airdrop. I actually wonder if even it's going to end up being that good of a trade for those who kind of bought the TBAC.
Yeah.
We have to assume those are going to drop significantly. I think the huge winners here, anyone who won the pre-mint raffle for the 250 slots, those are huge winners, because they're going to get to pay 0.07. And then anyone who had the foresight to buy into these Chronicles like months ago when they came out, they've got a great entry. So I think this is the biggest drop of the week. It's coming out tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern. I think absolutely it's going to sell out. I think it will likely be, I think it's got a shot to be the leading volume project tomorrow, which Kirafuru didn't get, Lazy Lion certainly didn't get. So I think they're going to set themselves kind of away from the pack in volume terms.
Kind of like PXN did.
Yeah.
So,
but I think
this one to watch.
I think they're getting revealed.
Instant?
Yes. I want to say that. I'll try to confirm it. If not, we'll follow up. But that's a big factor. The website's outdated, so we're not going to find it right now. But when I was doing the research on Monday, I thought I saw it was instant reveal. So I think that'll be a big one, and it'll avoid that arc where it runs up pre-reveal and then just falls out. So we're going to get a lot more natural price action on this one. I see that there's the question on the artist backing. Yeah, Tempers is the artist behind this one. He's got kind of a cult following. His pieces on Foundation are commanding 10 to 15 ETH, so he's got a legit portfolio of sales. People love his pixel art. D Farmer is probably one of the biggest whales who's been touting this. He said this and Ringo, the only 2 products he's going to mint for the foreseeable future. So I think that caught some eyes. I don't think they're planning to run this like a business project. It's much more of like an art project. And like art and lore is how I would kind of categorize this one.
Yeah, and he's done some work with nouns and some of the nouns artwork, and definitely look at some of the Timbers art, because for pixel art, I think it's pretty high quality. Some people they're like, oh, these pixelated apes or whatever, but he's pretty highly regarded from an artist standpoint. He's done some stuff with Gremlin as well, so just pretty connected. It's not just some random project either. 2,500 followers on Foundation is actually kind of high compared to some of these art blocks that we've seen. You go on and they have like 12 followers, but yeah, also part of the Bored Ape community. I think relatively well liked. Who knows? Maybe based on that GIF there. Like maybe there's a potential game down the road that's simple pixel art. Uh, Unsure yet, but this one that I'm going to be following, like you said, if it comes out the gate at 3, I'm not sure if I'm necessarily a buyer, but if it comes out the gate at like 1.5 or something, like if it's coming out lower, then I could be interested in there. I mean, you share 250 of the same followers. So I think there's the right people are following and watching this project that I think it's one to look at. So
Definitely agree. And entry price is everything in this market. So I'm with you. If we can get this thing cheap, I'm gonna definitely be looking at it.
yeah, cool. So that's pretty much what we're looking forward to this weekend. Going to be news around potentially Otherdeeds, but then definitely the Moonbird stuff uh, and Chimpers. Those are the main things to watch for this weekend. I think a lot of the stuff that's happened come up to now on the week, like the lazy cubs, like they're probably at this point not going to have much going on that you need to pay attention to. Like maybe people go into them if they start running at some point, but who knows? It's not probably not a trade for me. Probably stick to my watching what's going on with Yuga and Proof stuff, because those are basically the leaders right now as far as the space goes. So those are the ones I'll be watching coming up this weekend. And then we'll be back here on Monday to talk about the upcoming week in NFTs. So we'll see you guys. Have a nice weekend.